This is the deadliest wildfire on record, 114 dead.
Government agencies and officials did not get involved till like 3 to 5 days later. Even the amount of involvement was minimal. So to me, I'm proud to say that our community, as many differences that we have, when it's time to come to each other's aid, that's when the Aloha spirit shows up. I'm seeing people that I used to know, that I used to work with, even up in Kula where I used to live, and heroes are rising from the ashes. It's the everyday common person that's coming through, and they're doing amazing, extraordinary things. And they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, out of this deep empathy, this humanitarian effort to just be there. And I don't think that's really being shown a whole lot. Alexander Baldwin, that owns like 44,000 acres and their subsidiaries, and they're siphoning out over 133 million gallons of water from East Maui. This is a tribal system that we are involved in here in Hawaii, especially on Maui. And as soon as you interrupt that, it impedes our ability to care for each other. We need a lot of work for ourselves. We need a lot of work from people to support us and creating an infrastructure that would actually work. Back to the water, back to the land, back to being informed. Knowledge is power. Know who you are in order for this thing to come about. Because I see this as being like an awakening again of an emergent culture. But it can only be done if each of us are willing to step into that indigenosity.
Grand Rising Soul Family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. And Sacred Sons, I want to start off by just saying thank you and express gratitude for our entire community who has shown up for the Maui Fires Relief Fund, which is giving support to our brothers Koa Taylor and Kale Ka'alekahi as they are on the ground in Maui, responding in real time to this disaster. And so we are quickly approaching our goal. If there are those of you out there that wish to contribute, that want to send your resources through in a good way, please check out the show notes and look for the Maui Fire Relief Fund. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to get into it today with our brother Kale. Kale, how you doing over there?
I'm doing good, brother. Stoked to be on this episode with you. Kind of a breath of fresh air, with all the things going on. So, yeah, I'm just ready to share.
Beautiful.
This mana has been being cultivated.
Yeah, so much happening in the world. It's like it's all hands on deck. We talk about embodied masculinity in so many ways, and here we are presented with opportunities to show up in real time in our lifetime. So acknowledging and honoring you, Kale. With that, our guest today, he's a spiritual activist and cultural innovator, and he's a cultural director of Sacred Sons. Welcome, Kale Ka'alekahi.
Oh, very nice. Thank you, man. What a good intro. I always love the intro, man. Yeah, so just talking about the embodied masculinity too, it's interesting. Just a quick little story about me was, being at home here and being really like tuned into activism, and learning about the history of my home and what happened to our water, where it went, to our land, all the legalities, the bureaucracy, the politics that came with having a kingdom that was illegally overthrown. So I was in the thick of it for a long time, especially going to, a cultural school, which we call halau here. That was like my thing, that's what I wanted to embody, like as part of my masculinity was like, I'm an activist, for my people.
When I first met you, I knew you as an activist. I saw you in the pictures on top of Mauna Kea.
Yeah.
You're out there, like in it.
Yeah, in it, and just doing my small part, because there's a lot of community leaders that show up, that have been here for a long time, and that's one of the things I want to talk about as well. Like when it comes to community leadership, for us out here in Hawaii, it's not as simple as just somebody that's ready to come up and say like, "Oh, I can do everything. Like I'm the one. Like I can handle it because I got all the resources." It's like no, there's spiritual leaders and cultural leaders, and a lot of them we call kumu, and these kumu they teach. History, genealogies, depending on the halau, hula, chant, dance, song, all of that. And so when I was involved in all of the activism, it was really heavy, because when you have another cultural lens to work with, the perception and the orientation that you have as a person is dramatically different than somebody who's never experienced it in that way. And a lot of times people compare it as to like, oh, well, I have empathy too, for nature. And I'm like, it's not the same. Like having empathy for nature, but also having a culture that bonds you and that you're obligated by is two very different things. So like, it's not just, oh, I love going to Iao River. It's like, no, I have people buried out in Iao River. It's different. There's skeletons out there. And this isn't about a classification of a hierarchy of who's more human. It's just there's a difference in relationship and in this animation of life that when you go really deep into that, it's just you're brokenhearted. This is where the grief came from. So being in the thick of that, I wanted to change up my life dramatically, especially after COVID. And then I found Sacred Sons. So I was like, I was going to go run away and do men's work. You know what I mean? And get involved with that. And then this happens. I'm back home. I spent, almost 3 years with
and it happens while we have a team on the ground in Maui.
Exactly.
I mean, this is like, just from my perspective of you, this is like full circle. It's like all coming to this one moment as a part of your life experience. You know what I mean? What's that like?
Yeah, that was heavy. It was like coming back full circle. So, I had a conversation, and we did a sweat before the fire, as I come back home, and their conversation was about prophecy and like how the invocation of prophecy and how, these big prophecies will come like, oh, eagle and condor, the Americas will be united, and, the rainbow people will come, and, all this. And I was like, I don't really know about all that, like I hear that, I got it. But out here at home, there's already prophecies that have been running. There's spells that have been cast long ago. And so when I started to get this full circle come back, I was like, oh, here it is, like ancestors revealing again. Like, welcome back home. Now get back to work. Like, you're needed. That was scary for me. Because I was like, even the phone call we had the other day, I was like, I wanted to get away from this because it's so complicated, heart-wrenching kind of history, but then also amongst our people, we have a lot of different edges with each other, and we can't always meet those edges together. So I left, and then now I'm back. It's like, I've got an army behind me now. Like I've got a whole community, I've got a brotherhood, and so that's what I'm grateful for. So these prophecies, at least locally, yeah, they're coming through and being fulfilled again.
Yeah, and I love to see you returning back to your home and being there right on time to show up in the ways that you already have. Could you tell me a little bit about what you see in terms of the people coming together? This has been, just from my perspective in California, what I'm able to see, one of the bigger storylines is like, man, Hawaiian people are really coming together, like as a people for this tragedy. Are you seeing that as well, like in your way?
Yeah, brother, good question. Because, most of what has happened from the moment of the fire, I just say it's like pretty much all of it. From the moment that the fire had happened, there was already a lot of government failure and incompetency. There was no communication. There was so many like blunders, like full on. So the people came together. Grassroots, organized community volunteer work and effort has been the main driver for all of this out here in Hawaii, out here on Maui. And we're talking about West Side and upcountry, because a lot of people just see Lahaina because Lahaina burned down. That whole Lahaina town burned down, but people lost properties and homes and belongings in upcountry as well, up in Kula. So yes, government agencies and officials did not get involved till like 3 to 5 days later. And even the amount of involvement was minimal. So to me, I'm proud to say that our community, as many differences that we have, as much of, disagreements we might have amongst each other, when it's time to come to each other's aid, that's when the Aloha spirit shows up, full, live in the flesh. It's like people come through strong. And that I'm so proud of. That I'm grateful. Proud because, this is my home. This is my community too. Yeah.
And I can't help but think there was, you might have been at Medicine Festival, remember? Just on the real. I really see the bigger picture here and your role in it. And just from a sacred son to another, I want to say thank you for being willing, even to put out the little bit of messages that you do. I imagine that it's hard in the moment to muster it and actually give that communication, but it's so vital. and it feeds us because the media is doing a terrible job at documenting what's really happening, you know? And so we need our leaders, and I'm calling you in, you know, calling you that. We need our leaders to speak and to communicate and give us the real. And so, you know, at this point in time, this is the deadliest wildfire on record. They're saying 114 dead. We know there's over 1,000 people still missing. Wildfires displaced thousands of people in Lahaina, Kula, like you said. What's something you would want us to know? What's something you want people to know about maybe things that are not being reported?
I do feel, you know, with that question of like, what's being reported, what's not being reported, it strikes me, you know, it strikes me because if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't have all the information that I have right now. I'm not getting my information from the people that we put into leadership. So when we talk about leadership as well, it's like, there has been none out here. Like when it comes to government agency and all of that. So when I look at social media, it's like, I'm seeing people that I used to know, you know, that I used to work with, that I used to see out on the West Side, you know, even up in Kula where I used to live, and heroes are rising from the ashes. And it's the everyday common person that's coming through, and they're doing amazing, extraordinary things. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, out of this deep empathy, this humanitarian effort to just be there. And I don't think that's really being shown a whole lot. I think there's been a lot of attention on, you know, it's a strategy, dude. It's a strategy. It's a stock doctrine. You know, they're like, look at this thing that has happened, you know, 22,000 structures, you know, 83%, 86%, you know, are residents, and all these people are missing. But it's like, look at the story of a community that has come together. Look, like, point out, I want the media, especially like major mass media, to point out the incompetencies here and the lack of transparency. And maybe they are. But, you know, this is a very revealing. It's like from the fire, right? Reveals the corruption. And when I look at my community, these everyday people who have families and are spending their time with their community, getting them fresh water, making sure that they're okay, whatever supplies that they need, they're there to give it to them. And then they still have families at home that they have to take care of, and they do it again the next day. And it's like everything came to a halt, and it still pretty much is for these past 2 weeks. And so I think what's most important for me to share too is the understanding of what this is as a disaster has so many layers to it. And it's just one of a series of many. The chemical spill in Ohio, Katrina, you know, Sandy, all these different places. The wildfires are going on in Canada. The fires that happen in California.
There's wildfires in every continent right now, except Antarctica, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, you know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. Maybe there's an underground second Earth over there in Antarctica where there's street. You know what I'm saying? There's so much going on that I just want people to first don't be so detached from the reality of your own humanness, and to find some grounding in prioritizing those things that are most important in your life. It's not so much about how much you're consuming, right, with the media. It's about what are you actually doing? What does this incite in you? Is there some kind of inspiration or motivation? Are you reevaluating your life at this moment? What is your deepest concern? That's what I would hope would be more of a message. As much as this is, you know, we could be talking about facts and figures and stats and time, but the spirituality, you know, context of all this shouldn't be lost either. And so a lot of what's not being talked about too is, you know, and I'm just going to share this information, is that with the amount of people that are missing at this point in time, more than likely have died, have perished, right? And so there's a lot of loss and a lot of mourning, and there's going to be a backlash, right? On top of our leaders and other people, like there's going to be a lot of upset family. And we're not just talking about people that have perished that are from here. But these are people who visited too. They have family members in other places, in other countries, possibly. So with that mourning and that loss, we need to find out how to better take care of our community mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And the issue that we're finding right now is like that's not a possibility because of government agencies, because they're the ones who say what's allowed in and what's not allowed. Like the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, all the things that we've heard about, all supplies being cut off, this and that. They're the ones who are determining who is registered organization that is allowed and who isn't. My issue with that is we've been taking care of ourselves. This is a tribal system that we are involved in here in Hawaii, especially on Maui. And as soon as you interrupt that, it impedes our ability to care for each other, to continue to be there for one another. So that's the thing that I would really like people to understand is we need to start taking care of ourselves without the hindrances of outside forces. So, the spiritual context of it all too, we can get in about Lahaina as well if you want. But
yeah, I do. Before we go fully there, because I think that's a more ethereal realm where we're going to go. I want to talk to you about the history. I want to talk to you about water rights. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I want to stay here because right now what you're speaking to as well is the grief and the grieving process. And no doubt there's still many people who are in shock. I know just for myself to see the images over and over, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And so there was another thing we had talked about. You've been invited to bring in some of these brothers who are first responders, brothers and sisters, and hold some ceremony for them and to help them through this trauma that no doubt they are experiencing. And how, listen, this is the part of being a cultural innovator. You called it in.
Yeah.
And now the prayers are being answered in a way as well, right? Can you speak to that piece? So, how do we begin the grieving process from this experience?
Yeah. There's a thing about this that I learn about from being on the land, being in the ocean, planting, making rock wall, all these things. There is a touch there where there's a friction. There is something that needs to be approached, and it's always hard because that there's gonna be so much effort. Like it's a difficult proposal because it's gonna take a lot of work and it's gonna ask and demand at the same time. So it's gonna ask you and it's gonna demand of you more of this part of you that doesn't want to feel, right? That wants to cope. And by coping, by distancing, neglecting and avoiding. And I think we need to excavate into that to elevate into these places. And that grief will begin when the people can start to look into each other's eyes again. When we slow down and stop looking at where all the supplies are going and all the donation monies and all these things, when it stops racing around, it starts to slow down. And then now it's just us. And I'm just looking at you and you're looking at me, the grief will happen. And that's how it'll start, I believe. And it's already going there. We've already had, a coalition that's been started with the West Maui Ohana, Nauhana Olele. I think they're called a coalition of different leaders. And they did a little press conference out there. And people can look it up if they go follow Kako'o Haleakala or Kanai Okana. And each one of the leaders spoke. I think there's more, but I think 3 or 4 of them spoke. And then at the end, they sing a song, O Ko Aloha. And to me, that was like the saying out loud, like, this is kind of our rallying song, a way to come together behind. And this is the song that we sing now to begin our grief process, to begin not just the process, but to begin our mourning, for that time for us to cry and to hold each other. And not to just feed into, the theatrics of it being online, right? Like we're talking about the fire and this and that and all that. That actually interrupts the grieving because you're just in constant shock. You're in constant, fight or flight mode. But when you sing a song like O Ko Aloha and it taps into you, then it's like, now it's time for me to feel, to bring all of that energy down into the ground again so that I can feel myself, where I'm really at and what is at the core of me. And that grief is a song. So that's how we begin. That's how I was taught. It starts with slowing it down seeing each other where we're at, like person to person, face to face, and singing a song. That's how it gets started.
That's beautiful, because what's also true is the more I consume those images, the more I become numb to it.
Right.
And that's another part of the game. It's like we can't feel until we look at each other in the eyes. I think that's beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's seeming that there's going to be tragedy. There's always going to be tragedy as a part of life, and we get to choose how we respond to it. I'm going to get back into some of the political pieces, but is there any part of you like that's your home, man? I know that's your home. That's where you've worked. You have married people. You have like brought so much love, ceremony, fun, drunken fights. I don't fucking know what was going on. You have a lot of experience over there. Is there anything like a first person for someone maybe who's not connected to this place in a way? It's a significant place. It's a significant place in many people's hearts.
Right.
Like you said, not only people who live there, but people who like really cherish that place.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say that creating a life here, that's what I should say, is like, I really immersed myself in this aina, that which feeds. I tapped into parts of myself through the experiences of these elements that are here, and also the people. And so, I could just say I've married over 1,000 people, and I've done like countless kayak tours and cultural tours with people across the island, and just sharing information, being out in the jungles, learning agroforestry, polyforestry, permaculture, going up to Haleakala, camping out there, for days on end, no cell phone, being in ceremony with my halau at Pu'ukohala, for the years. Those are all like priceless, incalculable, cannot put a price tag on, cannot be bought or sold engagements of mystery that for me to be able to share that with people, just even the smallest way, for someone to get just a touch, just even a taste of some real food from that. Maui gave that to me. Like I couldn't have done that without Maui. I couldn't get there without Maui. So being, like how you said, like, immersed in this place and being able to share all of that, it means so much to me in that same way. And I think that's what it means to like be an activist in spirit, to innovate culturally, to be an activist for culture. And it's like, it takes a lot of work. And once you see, you can't unsee. Once you do, and you go far enough, there's no going back. It's like, these are things we always say to each other too.
Totally.
Yeah. So hopefully by me sharing a little bit of that, people can, like I said, real food.
Yeah.
Not just what we're consuming from the media and, the faux authenticity stuff, and the hyper vulnerability and the, conspiracy fantasies, the apocalyptic worldview. Like, I don't know.
Sometimes it's hard not to go there, in a way, just because things are so maligned, seem so manipulated. So it's hard for us not to go there. And so this is what I want to say here. We know that we're 2 weeks out from this tragedy, but this tragedy started a long time ago. Here we are one day after the 64th anniversary. Is that correct? Of Hawaii becoming illegally stolen and named a state. So this tragedy started long before, and like one of the videos you recently posted on Instagram illuminated how like the water has been diverted as a result of all the sugar plantations and the things that have been happening for now a couple hundred years. And so here's what I want to say. Even I was there with you during COVID on Maui, and it's like, man, is this the time? Is this the time for Hawaiian people to reclaim, to take back what is theirs? there's that bit of a sentiment in the air as well. It's like it doesn't serve us to put energy into conspiracy, but it does serve us to put energy into community and back into people. And so, yeah, is there anything about you've done long form videos? I would say if you're listening to this, go check out Kale's videos on Instagram. They're really amazing and really educational. This education is important. So, is there anything about Maui from that perspective of the history and how this is a kind of a long time coming?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, this is totally a long time coming. And so, remember, like I was kind of talking about like prophecies before. Yeah, we have so many chants and stories that acclimate ourselves to, we call them Olelo Noel, to the repercussions, what happens when we don't maintain right relationship with natural law, right? Or like the order of things as determined by nature as a whole. And like, even by saying so, implies a separation, that there is something nature that's outside of us, but that happens when you become a city builder and you work, imperial-mindedly like that, which is what happened here. So when we talk about the theft of water and all of that, it was a long process, right? Because initially, so let's just take Maui, for example, because this is a big story. And that was one of the things with the videos. It's like, as soon as I started getting into it, I was like, man, it's so big. Like I gotta stay focused on just this little bit. So let's just talk about Maui. So there are records of sailors coming to Maui in the 1700s, and they wrote in their logbooks that they could smell the island before they could see it. How could they smell the island before they could see it? It was a densely populated like jungle in certain areas, but then there was also dryland forest. And in those places, we have fragrant trees like sandalwood that was very abundant. So just that alone is evidence how much forest that we had out here and how green this island actually was previous. So in order to get to a plantation with sugar, you got to log all that out. And people wonder, like, they logged the whole island? Yes. What's the evidence of that? If you come to Maui and you look at the faces of these mountains, they're essentially bald. There's invasive grasses growing on them and, invasive trees. Invasive is a whole nother topic. But if you look deep into the valleys, those are the last remnants of native forests, and they're untouched because nobody can get up there. But if you look at the mountains where they're at now, it's easily accessible. You have people working, 100-man teams up there at logging camps. In 50 years, the whole island can be logged. So then once that happens, now there's access to waterways into the mountain because already it's been explored and it's been surveyed. So then now there is sugar and pineapple and the plantations that had gone on in the Caribbean, those methods and everything else from years previous comes to Hawaii. So now you're creating ditches, reservoirs, aqueducts, and flumes to siphon all this water from natural flowing waterways and indigenous ecologies to then feed profit-driven, plantation era capitalism. So what does that do?
They turned an entire island, an entire ecosystem into industrialized agriculture and monocropping, which is further detrimental to the soil and to the land.
Exactly. And the methods of that use is primarily for high yield, right? And then you also got to figure they got to process all of that raw cane, right, into sugar. And then they got to export all of that. So when we look at water rights that is going on right now is because of that happening during the monarchy time. So it wasn't as simple as this is what businessmen wanted. They had to get access from our monarchy, from the government. So that has been played out 160 years ago, 200 years ago already. And so it's still established. So what we have now are newer iterations of neo-capitalism, right? Which looks like large real estate companies, land developing companies. And that includes Alexander Baldwin that owns like 44,000 acres or something like that. And their subsidiaries. And they're siphoning out over 133 million gallons of water from East Maui, from the EMI. So when we look at West Maui, you have West Maui land and Maui land and Pine. They own all that water in there. And you don't own the water. It's actually illegal, but they own the system that was created from that plantation time with Pioneer Mill. They own the system that then diverts water to go to all these subdivisions and, you know, resorts and golf courses and whatever else. So this is the predicament for a people, right? For not just Native people, this is the predicament for all people. Because if you control the water, you control the land, you control the land, you control the food, you control the food, you control the people. So all of that is what's been going on. And so this is one of the things I want to talk about too. So there's a lot of this engagement with that because people are like, oh, you got to get the Hawaiians back their land because, you know, everything was illegally done. It's all on paper.
Bill Clinton wrote an apology for it, admitting guilt, right?
Right. Admitting it. But so what do we do with that? You know, that was in 93. That was 30 years ago. You know what I mean? So what's the difference? It doesn't make a difference because that is the profit motive. If there is no bottom line to be earned or to be made, why would they change it? What's going to happen? There's no profit in giving people back the water, right? Because then now we just get to live freely and there is no restriction on food. There is no restriction to access because we're determining it for ourselves. We're a self-determined people, right? Sovereign. So that can't happen. So on top of that, we're talking about 200 years of paper genocide, along with, you know, mixing and along with gentrification. So a lot of the Native population have moved away. So we have more Hawaiians living abroad in places like California and Nevada, more, or even the Pacific Northwest, more so than back at home. So when people are talking about, you know, keep Hawaiian lands in Hawaiian hands, I'm like, there's not enough of us. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
So that's what's not being talked about either. It's like we're like 10% of the population here.
Wow.
Maybe even less. And the majority are people who, you know, have lived here for generations, possibly that are of other, you know, descendancy. And then there's people who've moved here, you know, just in the past like 10, 20 years or so, or even more recent. So my thing isn't necessarily about race or ethnicity at this point. You know, even though that was a big thing for me growing up, it's like, hey, you're a dying breed. Like, you know, like you gotta repopulate, you know, your Kanaka, you know, descendancy, your heritage. And I'm like, I understand that. You know, that's something, that's a story too. But for me, I'm like, hey, we're all mixed. You know, like you go down far enough, we're all mixed, we're all hybrid, you know. So I'm looking at what's your allegiance here? Are you here to affirm life on this land, on this Aina, in this way, culturally, being culturally responsible, being culturally attuned, and having some discretion to that? Then okay, let's do it. Do you want to educate yourself? This isn't about appropriation or anything, because we keep talking about that. This is about, are you inherent to the world and to the earth, and do you know how to be here? Can you be a part of the sacred reciprocity? Can you hold yourself accountable to all of these things? To natural order and natural law. Can you attune to that? Okay, now maybe we can start working on getting our water and our land back. But we need everybody. We need everybody.
You'll be like, well, are you for humanity or are you for corporate greed? And everyone's like, I'm for humanity. It's like, well, where are you putting all your resources? Into corporations. Like, we're all guilty of it at some level, and collectively we have to make choices. We have
Absolutely.
to make collective choices as people for humanity, for life. We have to make those choices. I don't want to get into like the conversation about where we're spending our dollar, but I just love that you said, you know, it's not about race. And then at some point it's like, man, it's not even about blood. It's like we're at a time where we have more awareness now. So it has to be more than that. And if it's happening here, guaranteed it's happening in other places simultaneously.
Yeah. And you know, just for the sake of this conversation and people that are listening, you know, I just want to be clear. Like, I believe, you know, in bloodlines. I do. I believe in having the blood, the koko, and that's important. I believe in heritage. I believe in ancestry, no matter where you're at. But I also understand that we're living in a globalized society with globalized problems and issues. And I'm not trying to homogenize nothing. I'm not trying to put us all in one lumped pot. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm saying, like, before we start talking about, just getting Native people this and that, we got to start questioning ourselves. Like, what is the motive of that? Are we even informed on what that's going to be? Is this a white savior thing? Is this, we need to save the world thing? What is it? Because to me, I'm like, we've been dealing with this for generations. And it's only when a disaster happens or something critical like this that people are like, okay, we got to like help these natives. And then after some time, it's just like, oh, we're in the background again and the government keeps pushing us out, or whoever, big money. So this is what I'm saying. It's important to understand your own personal history about who you are and where you come from. So that way you know where you're going, so you can orient yourself. But it's not a place to just use as a pivoting point to leverage some kind of agenda. That's what I mean. So if we're trying to get people back onto the land, we're going to need support, because out here, as a people in Hawaii, we're the most susceptible, to obesity, to disease, and health problems and issues. And we're also the most disenfranchised of the people. So it's like, we need a lot of work. We need a lot of work for ourselves. We need a lot of work from people to support us and creating an infrastructure that would actually work. So here we go again, to the water, back to the land, back to being informed. Knowledge is power. Know who you are in order for this thing to come about. Because I see this as being like an awakening again of that. Like I said, bro, awakening of an emergent culture, an emergent culture of awakening. That's what I see happening. But it can only be done if each of us are willing to step into that indigenosity. Because we all have that in us, but it's probably the least talked about, the least looked at, the least, related part of ourselves is that indigenous part. And I think that's what really needs to come online. So yes, I believe in my people. I believe in our home. I believe in our community. I believe in all of those things and what we're doing. Yet there is such a thing as too much too soon. There is such a thing as too late as well. And maybe there needs to be a resurgence of something else. And that's what I'm seeing now. Maybe the grief song of our people is what needs to be seen, not Fantasy Island, not the proverbial Garden of Eden of the shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm saying, look, we can be all of that and more as an example for the world if everybody is in alignment with what we're looking at and where we're trying to go. And not just having a seat at the table. Let us guide the ship. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. I wish you would put that in the I statement. Let me guide this ship, Kale, because I'm with you. I got your back, bro. Let Kale guide this ship, son. There's a part of me that sees that in you. One of the things that so many of these brothers and sacred sons sees in you is the connection that you have directly to your culture and to the land, to the songs, to the language, to the origination. And that's a part of you that that draws people in because of how much of a lack there is in that for us collectively. The disconnection from our lineages and from the songs of our ancestors. And so you're one who carries that in such a powerful way that it does. It attracts people like, fuck, if he can carry that, there's something about it. It gives it more meaning. So I appreciate you honoring that part of yourself, but also like you're a global citizen. You're one of them too.
Yeah, one of them with a U.S. passport. When we were talking about sovereignty and all that, I was like, hey, man, I got a U.S. passport. I gotta get out to Europe. You know what I mean? And yes, I'm a global citizen, and with that too, bro, is like I'm embracing that as well, more so than ever. I've always been a reluctant leader. I've always felt that, I know my place. I know what I can do. I want to support those around me. I didn't want to just be out front and be the guy, because I saw what happened when men did that. It's like it got to their heads and they started spouting all this rhetoric about who they are more so than who we are. And so when I've seen that, like within my personal relationships with people, or, you know, whatever kind of leadership roles that have been around. So for me now, embracing that part of myself, I'm like, okay, how can I approach this with sincerity and integrity, you know, grace, but also with some tenacity, you know, some real grit too. It's like, I want to be out there working, you know, I don't want to just sit back and collect the money and distribute it. You know, I'm trying to be out there and figuring it out. During this whole fire and everything else, it's been a re-education for me again, back to it. So it's like, yeah, I want to guide this ship. You know, I want to take us there. And that's been shown to me in visions too. It's like, here, guide the seat. Guide the ship. You're in the navigator's seat. Do the thing. You're ready. So I feel that calling more and more each day. And I see that even amongst my community, you know, different brothers who've been working really hard, you know, on the ground, inviting me in, getting me in touch with people. They're always wanting to invite me to the conversation, to the meeting. And it's just trust, you know, trust and faith in who I am and what we're doing here together. It's collaborative. And that's the kind of leadership I wanted to be of, you know, a collaborative one.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I've said this in the past, it may not be necessarily about tearing down the old, but it's about building the new. And are there new ways to lead in a collaborative way? I think this is something we train in. This is something we get to practice in often. And so it was really dope also to see, you know, we had brothers out there with you from Maui Mana, and it's like, yeah, sometimes we just have to adapt and put those brothers to work. And I'm sure there was a lot of medicine in that as well.
There was. Yeah. There was so much, man. It was wild because, you know, we're having the event and everybody's already here.
Right.
You know, essentially, and then the fires happen. And it's just being torn, you know, I can just speak for myself because I know a lot of the men, you know, had their own feelings around it, but it was just being torn. I was like, okay, I have to do this work now. I have to take care of these brothers, and we got to get in to, you know, provide the thing that we said we're going to do, because this is what this brotherhood is about. And then I start questioning, like, how important is this really? You know what I mean? Like, us gathering this way, like, how important is it really? Like, is this really what we need to do? You know, I mean, the interpretation of it is like, what is it that we're really sinking our teeth into right now? What is the thing that we're trying to absorb right now? And it was hard for the men to really get acclimated to where they could be settled for us to actually do the thing, you know, that we do. But so the opening day was just us sitting and talking and singing songs, sharing songs and praying and crying. And then the next day I was like, okay, get up. We're going out to Kula and we're going to go take care of the land that the sweat lodge that I originally went to is at. And we helped that auntie, we helped our uncle and clear out these trees that had fallen during the high winds and they couldn't get their cars out. And so that's what we did. And we did it another day. We just went out and helped out up country because that's where we were. And then it started to sink in. Then the men started to really feel like they were being of service and that they could fully be there in service to each other now because they went out and did it for the community, for people they didn't know, people who they're probably never going to see again. And they gave the gift of that service. And that's what really dropped them in. I didn't have to pull out, you know, my bag of tricks and like get them going.
You didn't have to conjure anything because it was already there. No. It was already there.
Yeah. And so that's the beauty of this work too, is it because it makes you question it. Because when disasters like this happen, we should be reevaluating what's important to us. And we should be questioning what it is that we're actually doing. And with this work, we become more aware of that and we become embodied in that. And so it's the posing of the question alone helps defeat any kind of biases or any kind of like sense of self-grandeur of like, oh yeah, this is the most best thing ever. And it's like, actually, it's not. But I do it because I know the potency of it and the power and what it gives to people. And it's a part of a prayer that I've had and these other men have had. And look what we can do when we get together. And you always say this, Adam. It's like, give me 200 men and watch what I can do with that. Right? Watch me change the world. Just give me 200 of them and I'll change the whole world. And I was like, yeah, that will happen. That can happen. It is happening.
We can change. Maui Mana, we can change it. We can change it. And, you know, there's this other sentiment. I love this, what you just said. Just in asking the question, is this what we should be doing? We're already having a step towards humility, a step towards the unknown, a step towards the acknowledgement. Hey, maybe we don't know everything, but we're willing to ask the question. We signed up for it. And I believe that prayer is so meaningful for the men who are part of it, and for all those ripples who those prayers land with. And then there's this other sentiment. I got it from one of your writings, because amidst all of it, there's still a sense for us as men that we're not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. There's all this tragedy in the world. You know, there's people who don't even have food. There's all this. There's so much atrocious shit happening, Kale. Bro, this child sex trafficking plague, like, we got to show up for this too, man. So amidst all of this, what do we do when we feel like we're not doing enough? Can you speak to me? Can you speak to the brothers who have some of that sentiment?
Yeah, man, that's a good question, bro. One of the things that comes up because of this work that we do is like bringing it back. You know, you just got to love yourself. You got to fill up your cup. You got to do that, you know, and you got to take care of yourself. Go do your cold plunge in your house, and, you know, put your red sauna on, and, you know, sing the songs that Kale got recorded for you, and do the prayers and do this and that. And just so you can just feel better. And I was like, shit, I don't think it's working, you know, but that's like, it's not working. I still don't feel like I'm doing enough, you know? And so I just come to this place of just, it sinks me in so deep, and it just feels like things just become flat, and like breathing becomes a chore, and waking up in the morning just feels like another day. And I'm just wondering, like, am I losing myself along the way with wanting it so badly because I feel so much? And then I just fucking fall on my knees, you know, and cry again. And that seems to be the only thing that's been working. It's like I'm going on when I can't go on. And I just keep showing up. And I have to ask myself, you know, I went to a local men's circle, and one of the brothers, you know, he's having difficulty with his relationship because he's been putting so much work into the community. And he comes back home, and you know, his lady, his partner, is wanting, you know, for him to be at home and take care of the home too. And, you know, she's addressing him, and it was really triggering for him, and boom, eruption, you know, he snaps. And it was so severe that she left the house, you know, because he was at the brink, right? At that edge. But she's just asking him to be a man at home too. So I had to ask him, I was like, brother, what are you doing it for? You're going out there for the community, but you can't even take care of your home and your lady. What are you doing it for? So you're just doing this for the attention? And he was like, as much as it hurts me to say, he's like, yes. He's like, I want to be seen as a good man. I want people to look at me as that I am doing the things, that I'm the guy that can do it, that I can carry the weight of the world on my back. And I want people to see me doing it. So what do you call that kind of a thing? A martyr? Yeah, something like that. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to be a martyr out here. And I'm not necessarily trying to be any kind of archetype, any kind of other thing. I'm just trying to discover me. Again, in connection to my ancestry. So when people see, like, oh, Kale's so tapped into this, he's holding it down as a cultural carrier and this and that. I'm like, that ain't glamorous. You know, because I believe it's in these moments when I've lost the coordinates, you know, when shit's got real rigid around here and the land's gone flat, and I'm feeling within myself like I can't expand in any of this. I feel like I'm just wilting. That's where I find the culture again, is in those moments when I don't feel like going anymore, but I still go. You know, like even making those videos. Like, I've always had it in me.
Yeah.
But I just never felt it that way, because it was almost like I needed to be in the pit of despair to be like, I need to get out of here and focus on something that I can bring to light for people so that they feel more informed and educated on something, or at least being able to see me gives them some kind of respite from their own, hurts and pains.
Because ultimately you're a creator. That what you're speaking to directly is like you're utilizing the power of the grief of that internal fire to create and transmuting it into creation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that creation and transmuting it is like, it's a healthy discourse between myself and spirit, whoever else. I'm just going back and forth. And it's like I said, it's that before, it's like that tension that comes. It's like, what are we dredging up? And does that need to be seen? What are we looking around? Is this something, like, it's an irony. I don't know how else to explain this, but something so deeply personal, yet not. Because I'm feeling, the weight of the exploitative systems that have been going on for so long. And I'm trying to like carry it all. And I'm realizing like, oh, this is part of the generational pain and hurt that I'm feeling. And it's arising in me again. And what am I going to orient myself around now? What is this? Is this a blessing or a curse? Or is it my curse with a blessing? Like, what is it? Am I just asking just for the fancifulness of my mind? No, it's like a very heartfelt thing. And it's like, yeah, it's intense.
Yeah. And we're in it. Grateful for you. And, even in those moments when you get lost, I want to say a couple things here in response. One of the things you just illuminated is like, if you feel like you're not doing enough or you want to do more, clean up your own fire. Clean up your own fire. Bearheart brings that through in a powerful way. It's like, don't be going around trying to clean up a bunch of other people's fires when you haven't even cleaned up your own fire. Yeah. If you feel like you're not doing enough, clean up your fire. We all know you got stuff to clean up. And I'll put my hand up too, right? And it's like, that's how we can show up. And then the next question, who do you do it for? Okay. So if you're not doing enough, then ask yourself that question. Who do you do it for? Are you doing it for Creator? Are you doing it for each other? Are we doing it for the brothers and sisters? Are we doing it for the ancestors? Who do we do it for?
Who do we do it for? We do it for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, brother.
Yeah. So I just and I like that. I like the story that you shared, because it's like, yeah, clean up your own fires, check in on your family and on those who directly need your presence. This is I feel like this is great advice in times of trauma, in times of reckoning, as Stephen Jenkinson has called it.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. That's where we're at. And then in terms of the grief, I love C's. There's 3 C's of grief as well, which are choose. And remember, you have a choice. And when it gets hard, when it gets to the depths of the grief, remember that you do have a choice and choose life every day. Connect. If you can, make the connection. Pick up the phone. Stay connected to people that you care about and who care about you. And then 3rd, communicate. Use your voice. Use this time to amplify the truth of what you have to say. This is not a time to feel blocked or constricted. Sometimes that fire provides us the freedom to say, hey, this is what I really fucking think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, totally. Use the power of grief to let motherfuckers know how you feel. Exactly. in a good way.
Yeah. In a good way. Always in a good way.
In a good way. I'm glad that we can, take this moment to laugh.
Yeah.
Heroes rise from the ashes, and none of us are getting out of this life without a fight. And so, whatever the fight is that you're present to, whatever it is that you're fighting for.
Yeah.
Fuck, this is the time to show up, isn't it? And if you need some inspiration to show up, or you need some tools, Convergence 8. Are you coming? Are you coming?
Yeah, I'm coming. I'll be there.
The return. Give me just like any piece of Convergence that you feel called to share, like whether that's something you're looking forward to or what you're calling in.
Um, Man, I don't know. Actually, I think because of all this that's been going on, I haven't put much thought into Convergence 8 really.
Of course.
But I know that what I've learned from this, this tragedy, this disaster, this communal effort, this tribal system, the history, the knowledge, the stories, I'm going to bring that all. It's coming with me wherever I go. This has been, a transfiguration of myself too. So maybe not so much of what I'm calling in for Convergence 8, but what I'm bringing, I guess, what I'm carrying now and what that looks like. So, I think what's important too about it all is like, with the things that have gone on, there is a lot of loss, cultural artifacts have been lost. People have lost lives. People have lost livelihoods, pets, children, in an instant, in a few hours, it's just whoosh, gone. So I'm thinking about not just the rebuild, right? But like the recreation of something new and old, the reformation of what once was in this fashion now. And what is that? What is that going to provide for us as a people across the world? Because it's about the legacy now. It's about the legacy of who is the ones that want to carry this torch forward in a way that they know generations after are coming. And then they know that generations before them have already laid out some of the groundwork. So is that what's going to happen? And I kind of see that as my own cry wherever I go now, like for the world. Are you willing to carry the torch now, to be a torch bearer during this time? Can you be the water bearer during this time? And what does that look like? Because, we need more leadership. We need more leadership with people, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, mothers, fathers, whoever they may be, in the fashion of that same like collaboration, cooperation, co-evolution, recreation of this new old way more than ever. So I guess that's what I'm calling it. Took me some time to get there.
It's a powerful vision. And it's a worthy mission.
Yeah.
I just want you to know, just as a human being and a brother in this community, like you got so many people that support you, so many people who are praying for you, and so many people who are singing your songs, our songs, these songs, And yeah, just know that you are one who is supported and who is looked after. And yeah, man, you're always in my thoughts as well, and just like sending you love and
thank you,
and everything during this time. Really.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, man, for all those ways that you're showing up, this world does need leadership. It's almost like we were onto something when we started this, right? It's like shit. So we trained up for it, and yes, no doubt, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I heard you say that, in one of your immediate responses, and it's like, I think that goes for all of us. So wherever you're listening and tuning in from, take care of your fire first.
Yeah.
And whatever you're bringing to Convergence, know that we can handle it. Bring your grief. As men, this is also a time and a season of grieving. So I imagine we're going to be calling a lot of that in. And if you're someone who has loss, know that you're coming to a space that is safe to feel it. And we're going to feel it together. There's a lot that can be moved from that type of a ceremony as well. Kale, is there any final words that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
Yes. For everybody that's listening, this is just one last bit that a little bit more of a cultural history again that I think is important to share. During the time of the plantations, they drained out a lot of the original wetlands and marshlands in West Maui. And in particular, there's a pond called Mokuhinia. It was a marshland that was eventually turned into a local, like a fish pond. And then within that pond, there was an island made, at least like a 1 acre island called Moku'ula. So that place has a very strong spiritual significance to our people here in Hawaii. And it was also one of the original seats of power when Kamehameha had established the monarchy. And then it got moved to Oahu. So I'm bringing this up because what that means to have a place with that kind of spiritual significance in a land that was just saturated with water and with life and ecology, for it to then be drained and then to be left, destitute and then filled in to have a baseball field and a parking lot placed on top, right? There's a severing of connection, not just in the physical, but in the spiritual too, when that happens. And I see that as being an example of what has happened to our people across the globe, across the world, and however far down the generations in each of our genealogies. And so my prayer, my plea for people listening is to educate yourself on sacred lands and sacred sites, especially with this one, with all the attention going on with Maui. Look up Moku'ula, look up Mokuhinia, and see these things, right? Because with the taking of water, right, from that hundreds of years, and then what comes later? A fire that burns a whole town. There is repercussions to everything. There are consequences and possibilities to every choice. Now, this isn't about my opinion of whether things are right or wrong, because that's not what I'm functioning in. This is about the information, the education of cultural heritage for us all as a people to recognize.
Everything has a cost.
Yes, there's a true cost to everything. And this is an age of reckoning.
Yes.
And so that's just what I wanted to say, is just to put that out there for people to like, okay, if that's what Kali's saying about Maui and you educate yourself on that, what does that mean for where you're living now, wherever you're at? It's not as simple as just like, colonizer this and indigenous that, or, corporate interest this and communal thing. No, this is about the exploration of the human at home and knowing how to belong. And what do we do now? What do we do now? So just wanted to speak on that because it's coming up, this is coming up. Like, what's going to happen? There's going to be a memorial there in Lahaina. What's going to happen? Who's going to be involved? And I would really like to see that place receive the attention that she deserves, so that will come back up for legacy for our people always to see again. Like not just the plantation era of our home, but not just the ancient either, but who we are with all of that gathered up within us. And then boom, we can still retrace the steps and still see the threads woven in between.
What are the stories that they will write about this time? Mm-hmm. What are the songs that they will sing that come from this time?
Exactly that.
This is where we can give our energy and attention to, not to be seen, but for the culture to be remembered and to be carried on.
Absolutely, brother. What are the songs that they're going to sing about this time? Are they going to talk about climate profiteering and neocolonialism?
Right.
They're down the road, maybe in academic circles, but if you want to get down to the culture, like let's sing about some fish ponds returning. Let's sing about some water coming through. Let's sing about, the fires that have happened, and let's sing about the whale songs that come through. Like,
Yes. These are the things that actually matter over long periods of time.
Long period of time.
Yeah.
These are the ones that hold steady, and they always have. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate just having the conversation, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And yeah, again, we have the Maui Fire Relief Fund. If you have the resources, please go donate. These funds will no doubt be used in a good way for people directly in Maui, Hawaii. And I mean, I guess let's just shout out Koa. My guys, they're doing like 8,000 meals a day over at the kitchen he was at. And, you know, I know Koa has also just been a real advocate for Sacred Sons to give back. And so in times of need, it's like, let's show up as a community and let's exceed our goal. You know, let's keep bringing some funds in so we can keep getting resources to the people in Maui.
Yeah, totally. And along with that, the money that has been donated is going towards getting communication lines open for people on West Maui that, you know, have been shut out. So helping with those efforts, along with water systems and filtration, that's coming through as well. So we're organizing that. And there's a lot of different players involved. So the money is going to go, you know, directly to them so we can get these out there. And then also with legal support. So there's, you know, a group of lawyers that are starting to coalesce and come together, and people just need some support in getting some money so that they could hire some lawyers. And some are doing work for free, but there's other more complicated areas that we're finding that this money can go towards. So just want to thank everyone who's supported in any way. Doesn't matter how big or small, just in any way that you even cared to give something. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is the long game, the rebuild, the new build. This is going to be a decade's worth of conversation. So again, out there, keep the conversation going. Share this podcast. Share Kale's amazing videos. Keep making them educational videos, please. Letting the people know. If you want to find Kale, come to Convergence 8. And with that, I think we did it.
Yeah, I think we did, man. Yeah, check me out on the IG.
Yes.
Everything there. But yeah, I think we did, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kale. With that, Maui Mana, Maui Fire Relief, Kale Ka'alekahi, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family.
Hey.
Peace.
Holla.